Hello and welcome to We Had Movies, and I'm your host Mo, and this is
Eric.
Eric. Yeah, and we're here to talk to you guys about films that we grew up on, and give you a little bit of background on the film, but also explore some of the fun facts about the film, and also touch base on why how we see it differently now as adults compared to when we were kids watching these movies with our parents and such. So speaking of movies that you'd watch with your parents, today's topic or today's film will be Mrs. Doubtfire. And I feel like Mrs. Doubtfire has probably been done by other podcasts as well, but that's okay because it needs to be done. And I think it's something that we grew up with, and I think it had a lot of importance in our childhood. Would you agree, Eric?
Definitely, this is a classic for me from my childhood. I think for a lot of people, this is a classic, and when you told me we were going to do this movie, I was very happy because I knew I'd be able to watch this with my partner Katrina, who's also a huge Robin Williams fan and loves this movie. So I thought it would be not only just a great opportunity to watch this movie with her, but also revisit one of my favorites from when I was a kid.
Yes. Robin Williams. I mean, if you're going to talk about this movie, there's no way you can avoid talking about the stylistic comedy approach of Robin Williams. And the fact that he's able to like alter his voice slightly to just like change character and then like even facial expressions
Oh, this is
sometimes.
this is a great movie that kind of showcases Robin Williams's ability, that skill he had at creating different characters and different voices to go with these characters.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, before we get into all of that, I mean, first thing, I don't know if it makes sense but to you, but I think with this movie I always feel like having like a cream covered pie or cake after I see the scene where he gets smushed like a pie in his face, or he
A
no, it
pie in
was
the
a cake.
face,
I think it
the
was a
whipped cream.
cake. Yeah, it
It
was
was a
cake.
cake. It was, yeah.
Yeah, but he just like just yeah immerses his entire face into a cake. So I feel like eating cake while watching this film would be a fun thing to do, and it would keep you feeling like a part of the film, keep you get the vibe.
Definitely agree. Also, the movie starts with a birthday party, so just kind of in
Yeah.
keeping with that cake motif, you know.
Yes, exactly. Cake motif. I like it. Yeah. And so, yeah, we'll stick with birthday cake. Birthday cake is probably one of my favorite forms of cake. I mean, there's a lot of different types of cake, but the birthday cake was always the
Well,
best.
it's just a little bit extra special, right? Someone's
Yeah.
birthday, cake. It's a
Hmm.
reation to celebrate and to have cake.
Yeah. Yeah. I could take that over chocolate fudge cakes, just, but anyway, so I digress. Let's go ahead and get into the book report. So I don't know, do you want to go and describe the film first, or
Yeah,
should I? Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
sure. Okay,
Okay, so
so I'll just do a quick summary. Mrs. Doubtfire is the 1990s comedy film starring Robin Williams as a loving father, loving but aloof father who loses custody of his kids after a pretty ugly divorce that we see at the beginning of the movie. To to stay close to them after this divorce, after he loses custody, he disguises himself as a British nanny named Mrs. Doubtfire. So this little trick he's pulling on his ex-wife allows him to stay in touch with his kids, um, get a job that he's required to do, and really just you know be close to his family that he just lost. That's interesting because as Mrs. Doubtfire, he learns all of the responsibilities that he kind of should have been exhibiting from the get-go as a father. Um, he also happens to rekindle his relationship with his kids throughout this movie, um, and it all kind of culminates in a reconciliation, if you will, of this family. Um, it's a fantastic balanced look at a pretty serious topic, which is, families getting separated, people getting divorced. And just Robin Williams manages to just take a pretty serious topic, pretty touchy topic for people, and makes a great comedy drama out of it.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And yeah, what I would like to add to that, and like my version of like the explanation of the film would be, um it's about a man discovering that he's internally a cross dresser, and um enjoys it and finds pleasure in cross dressing, and it to the point where it makes him more likable with his own kids. And this is seen as a negative thing by the end of the movie. Meanwhile, what is more important is that a father would want to be close with his kids, regardless of what his tastes are and the way he dresses up.
Mhm.
And but there's a little bit of discrimination in this film, and we'll talk about that, I think. So that's my view on some of the extra parts, a little bit extra to the salt. And did you bring up the husband, or sorry, the Pierce Brosnan's character? Who's like the new
The
boyfriend.
new the new boyfriend, yeah.
Yeah, so that is also a pretty pivotal, important part of the story as well, where Pierce, or the boyfriend, is this kind of attractive, more physically in shape, and he's somebody who's more concerned about things like money and
British
uh
accent too, I might add.
British accent, more concerned about things like that are, upper class, corporate, things that are important to that. And so it's more attractive to his ex-wife. And I mean, Robin Williams' character might originally, find that there's something wrong with this. He gets a little bit jealous about the fact that she's finding this other person attractive when she was always into me because I was funny. Well, the thing is that I think that gets learned throughout the story as well. Is is this journey where this man learns more about identity and how that's important, and how to also value yourself above all, and then that's how that helps you value others. Like if you took better care of yourself and you made sure that your kids reflected and took better care of themselves, then you would end up
Mm.
in, a happier person. And in general, you would have all the things that you want if that's what you wanted. But it's like he wanted to have the relationship with the kids without having to be the parent, I guess, is the issue.
He wanted to be the best friend and not wanted to didn't want to he didn't want to
Accept the
have to be the guy
role.
that says no, right? As parents often do. And I mean, not being one myself, but I mean, I was once a child, so I know that it's important to set certain boundaries with kids. And if you look at the beginning of the movie, there really are none.
Yeah.
Um, he and I mean, it speaks to the love that he has for his kids, but I think that kind of love without boundaries, without limits, can be pretty dangerous for both the parent and for the child, right? I mean, you're setting certain expectations in that child's head that, I mean, the rest of society probably can't live up to, and that probably is going to have some uh,
Yeah,
unwanted results.
exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, let's get into the actual film now. So, more just upon further reflection on the film, when you're opening this film, the first thing you're going to notice is it's just like as soon as you hear the person singing, you're like, oh, I know what's going on. It's Robin Williams. And as soon as you see Robin Williams and he's doing all the voice acting, he's doing the character of the this entire film already is summed up within like 20 seconds of the film. And the idea that this is all going to be about characterizing and like really showing you all the assets of Robin Williams. Like this movie was made to show off
For
Robin
sure.
Williams and
From
his
the very
ability to
beginning,
make a whole film himself. Like that's
yeah, from the very beginning, you establish Robin Williams playing
yeah,
two different people in
yeah,
the same thing, right? He's playing
exactly.
both the cat and the
The
bird in
bird,
the
yeah.
animated and whatever animation he's recording the scene for, right? And it very much is kind of foreshadowing the rest of it, where he does play two roles within the rest of the movie as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it does do a little bit of foreshadowing, absolutely. And I mean, there's a lot of jokes in there. I do find it bizarre that the thing that bothered him about this cartoon, which wouldn't he have already pre-read the script so he would have known it was coming, but like the
Yeah,
part that was
and that
promoting the smoking, like I just felt like that was a good I guess it was a way for them to show how this actor has, I don't know,
morals, ethics,
particular ethics, I would say, because like, yeah, I get that he values kids and he thinks that kids shouldn't be exposed to cigarettes at a young age.
sure.
Sure, but like you also have this other issue where you can't even set boundaries or rules with your own kids. So like,
Yeah, exactly. So there's very selective in what
yeah,
very selective outrage,
and I can almost feel Sally Field, and her character's anger,
frustration. Yeah,
frustration
definitely.
towards that. I can see why there was a divorce. It's just they really do try to paint the picture like she's the bad guy, and
Yeah, I mean, and that's just it. You don't really get to hear much of her story. Mostly
mhm.
his side of the story, and it is a bit of a sob story, especially in the courtroom where he the prospect of losing his kids is almost unbearable.
And like
But I
a
mean,
lot
like,
of people stay in relationships for 14 years and never really talk about the fact that they're not in love with the other person anymore. That happens all the time, especially if you're having kids in between, right? Like then you're
divorce
then you're paying
divorce is
attention
very expensive, right?
to
Like, so I
children.
mean,
Yeah.
it's not just about your kids if you have any. It's really about the financial aspect of divorce and what it's going to cost you both.
And
It's a
I think
lengthy,
that's what it
painful
came down to in
process.
the end. Yeah, I think it was is that Sally Field finally came into a position where she was able to do that. She was able to finally tell him like this is over
Well,
and
I
I
mean,
can't.
it kind of begs the question, how long was it this much of a problem, right? Like, how
Exactly.
long has this been going on
Exactly. And the film
with
doesn't really
Robin
highlight
Williams?
that. Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
It just
It kind
shows
of
you Robin
highlights a
Williams being
breaking
a really
point,
fun
right?
character. And I think that might almost be an issue because like for me, I'm like Robin Williams is so likable as a person in general.
Mm.
I mean, other than his little racist things that he does, when he like, oh, I'm not a Muslim, and he's like takes down the. Yeah, he had a thing with Muslims. He's. I remember his stand-up comedy, but like other than the like the like little things that comedians in the '90s would have had, he was also like very good at drawing people, very good at being likable, very good at, clowning around. It was his way of getting people to like him. And so you almost get lost in this character. But I think it's important to understand that I think the movie is trying to show you this, that like the father is not necessarily a bad guy either, but he's not the good guy in the story. Like there's a reason
He's not
why.
bad, but he's not great either, right? Like,
No.
exactly. There's a reason why he lost his kids to begin with, and it really was
Yeah.
because he was he acted like
Irresponsible.
he acted
irresponsible.
more
Yeah,
like the oldest fourth kid as opposed to being the parent. You know,
exactly.
instead of working with Sally Field, he worked against her. And I think
Yeah,
that party that they had at the beginning for their the son was like the breaking point. You know, he literally had a petting zoo like show up, and all hell broke loose in the
yeah.
house. You know, you had the
Again,
I think it
it's
was a
so
donkey or a
bizarre.
horse eating the cake that she brought out, like just a complete shit show of a party. And she's made out to look like the bad guy for shutting it down, right? But like if you objectively look at what was happening, like that was a disaster, you know,
Yeah,
like an absolute
absolutely.
disaster,
Yeah,
right?
it would have caused anybody to like have a mental break. Like I don't want to come home from work
No,
and have to clean up after like. And he's like, "Oh, we would have cleaned up before you." No, but that is obviously not true.
but
What he
were
was
you
saying,
though? Like
because
were you
because
though?
it's
Come
it's
on,
very
man.
clear that he wasn't going to, and this was all going to be a mess that she had to clean up again.
And I think
And
we
she made
see
it
that
very
like after the
obvious. Yeah.
divorce, when we first see where Robin Williams is living, we can see his apartment isn't exactly in great shape. You know, he
No.
does have like stuff everywhere.
But this is where I
It
go
doesn't
back.
look any better than
Yeah.
it doesn't look very much better than what the party looked like. So you
Yeah.
really have to think, okay, were you actually going to clean up after that party or not? But again, this kind of establishes a baseline for
Mhm.
the character that he is at the beginning of the movie, and it allows for so much growth, personal
Mhm.
growth on his character and all of the other uh, stuff that comes with that.
Yeah, and the important of the growth, and exactly, you're getting to the right part of the like story is like this is like the central part is like the growth of that character, and there's two ways you can interpret. There's so many ways you can interpret it, but a lot of people find at the time when that movie was done, it was supposed to be comedic that he plays the role of an older lady, and there's a lot of parts where they do a little bit of like slapstick where he's dancing around with the vacuum cleaner and the montage
Yep.
and I think it was supposed to be funny, but I find it ironic that it's actually more about this man finding out that by cross-dressing he's tapped into this other part of him, his feminine side or whatever, however gender you want to genderify it, but he wanted to tap into his feminine side to like explore a different version of himself to the point where it became a character in his like you don't he didn't have to do why would it matter if it was Mrs. Doubtfire that was doing that show that he was doing in the end, what and how is that going to be more interesting? It didn't matter what he was going to be dressed like. What it mattered is what he was going to be presenting to the children and how he was going to be presenting it to the children and in a fun way and in a in
Yeah.
a so at the end of the day, the only thing that mattered was he was the important part, the actor, but he did find solace in being Mrs. Doubtfire. It's something that brought him peace. And I think that's like almost like a hidden part of the story. It's like this, like, again, going back to the cross-dressing thing, it's like this man who discovers cross-dressing and finds it emotionally fulfilling and like mentally fulfilling. And there's some really gross parts where like even though like back then you would have been like haha that old man, the old bus driver's into a man dressed as a woman. I find that really kind of gross that he immediately saw this other woman and just starts like hitting on her almost like every day she gets on the bus,
Well, he just assumed
regardless of
that.
her age, regardless of his age. I mean, at the time, again, it was supposed to be funny, but now looking back, it's like, ooh,
Well, I
that's
mean,
really
she is
bizarre.
an older looking woman, right? So I guess he's
Yeah,
just assuming that she's old and
she's
lonely. I guess I don't know.
yeah, exactly. And he's like, oh, I got it in. But it's still bizarre, it's still a little bit like he to the point. But I mean, again, it was supposed to be funny, like, oh, I like European style because he noticed that Robin Williams didn't shave his legs.
Yeah,
Or yeah, like again, it's just like little things that even though it's supposed to be funny, it's like it's not really anymore like applicable to the way people are now. You know, you're not supposed to stare at somebody like unless you know them and you're trying to identify them or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there's no reason to like stare down someone and assume that they're available for you to. But I mean, again, that's just a little thing that I noticed in the movie. And other little things about the cross dressing thing that just bring up that theme is like at the end of the film, when it's so bizarre that the judge decides to take away his kids for good. I thought he was going to say, and remembering it as a kid, I was like, does he tell him it's because it's bizarre that he was stalking his wife, basically? Like he was just like hiding, you know, like in plain sight. And that's the bizarre part of him doing that. But no, the only thing that he was concerned about was his bizarre way of living and his choice of like dress, basically commenting on
Yeah,
the fact
and
that
a
he's
big part of
dressing
that is like,
like a woman. And I'm like, but that's not problematic. If a man dresses like a woman, that doesn't make him like
yeah,
not
but you have to
suitable to
remember
take
these are the
care
attitudes in 1993, right? I mean,
of.
obviously, like
Exactly.
30
And
years later, attitudes have changed quite a bit.
exactly. So there's a little bit of transphobia that you find in this film, even though it is very much about this man being liberated by the idea of like being a woman, just like playing the role of a woman. He learns a lot about identity. He learns a lot about what Sally Field's feeling when she has to discipline children. Um, the attitude that he gets from children is he's not used to it, almost to a breaking point. You know, in some ways Robin Williams isn't a very nice guy either. Like he explodes, he has points where he yells, and so even though he likes to be the nice guy around the kids, you can see where it's he's not capable of holding back his emotions, and that's not always a great thing for a parent.
Because he's no
Yeah.
longer their dad in that situation. He's doing a job that he
Yeah.
actually has to fulfill. Otherwise, he's not going to be able to see his kids anymore, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that it was important for him to be super fun daddy. And like Sally Field always had to be the responsible parent. And like, you know, she's the architect.
And
She's
really,
the,
that really is what it boils down to. And the whole reason why his relationship with his wife ended to begin with is that he was not a
mm-hmm.
responsible parent, and that's something
Yeah.
that he had to learn as Mrs. Doubtfire, um, in order to actually get his family back, right?
Yep. Exactly. And then from the divorce, like he obviously he loses his home uh because clearly he's not the bigger, you know, contributor to the money and the house and the everything, because it's not things he cared about. And so in the end, he was left with having to go live with his brother, which I found it odd that they. I mean, I guess it was because this movie was based on a book, so that was part of the story. But like, they could have just said it was a friend of his that was a makeup artist. But I guess it's his
Mm-hmm.
brother, even though they don't look related at all. But maybe because they're both voice actors at some point. Oh yeah, and the guy who plays the brother, he was also in Pocahontas, oddly enough, just like the last movie we had the willow tree, and this movie we had another voice from Pocahontas. I can't remember which voice he played, but yeah, that's funny. And of course, Robin Williams was the genie in Aladdin, and pretty much carried that whole movie, just like he did with Mrs. Doubtfire.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think there's a lot of identity, like what I've noticed, a lot of like things that Robin Williams probably identifies with the main character. I'm not sure, but it almost feels like yeah, he's almost that like person in real life. And I what I mean by that is like the little bit of when they show him kind of just like going off and just making noises to himself and just like being this like weird expressive, like that is Robin Williams, right? Like, and I wonder if like in those moments he's like doing something like, because I've heard that like he would stop taking medication so that he could be more
Well, the thing about
funny
this
and stuff
movie
like that.
is that what one of the and I wanted to save this for later, but one of the big things about this movie is that the director he he had Robin do a scene about two or three times according to script, and then he would just let Robin Williams improvise with scenes.
Right.
And I think that's how you ended up with a big part of the great comedic stuff is when you just let Robin Williams improvise and do his own thing because he really has an ability of capturing the essence or had an ability of capturing the essence of a moment or a particular scene and then just playing off of this internal ability to create a better scene, right? Doing whatever, whether it's a voice or some kind of physical comedy or whatever. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think he does like a great job in the comedy part, but I feel like he also like has this sort of like he behaves like a child almost. Like he does
mhm,
it's almost like he's capable of reverting to this. And I think a part of that's the part of the actual character in the movie as well is that this guy is he's not a grown man, right? He's learning to be a grown man, but he's not really
yeah, exactly.
he's kind of really he's never had to. I feel like it's almost like he had too much privilege in his life and no one's ever forced him to like reflect and do something about it. And this divorce is, if anything, has made him a better person for it, but he might not have seen that in the beginning, and that's why he was so upset, and that's why he had issues where he would fight with the wife, and even to the point where even the daughter is noticing and she's like, you know, why can't you just say sorry and like things like that.
Mhm.
And it's true, it's like it's very childish of him, like he just can't just like suck it up, apologize and say, you know, I'm wrong, you know.
Yeah. But I
He's
bet I
the
mean that's also a really like oversimplified view of just being able to think that, sorry can make up for,
oh yeah, for sure,
years
sorry is
of,
not enough. Yeah, no, 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 but just
at
even
that
in the
point,
moment.
sorry, it really isn't enough, like
No, no,
sorry's for like the first or second times that you fuck something up.
but I think in that
But
moment
like
I think
after
she's more
years,
like
it's
she was more like talking about like an expression, like as in like in the moment, because they were fighting, they were arguing, like you can just
yeah,
like not argue, right? Like even though you guys aren't, yeah, you're not together anymore, like you don't have to be, that doesn't have to be animosity. And I think that's where I understood from that.
hmm,
Yeah, there's there was the topic of like I was saying, the cross-dressing, but like again there's a little like it's just a little bit of transphobia. And again, that's we're talking about a movie from the 90s, so that's what I noticed. Robin Williams uses impressions to trick mom to hire him. That was interesting, where
the phone
he
calls were
they're doing the
hilarious. Yeah.
phone calls, yeah, and doing the different voices, and I think those were significant again to show Robin Williams' skill, and that's what it's about. Again, showcasing Robin Williams' abilities, but also it gives you a good idea of, if you're really paying attention to the film and you're reading the film, you're thinking, man, this guy is going the next level. Like this is, you know, go to jail sort of next level. Like,
Well, yeah, he's
you
like
know,
the lengths that he's going to do this is like,
you know,
sir,
and again, this is what I thought the
he's an
judge was going
actor,
to bring
right?
up,
So
you know, at
he's
the
he's an
end,
actor,
but
he's an artist. So they kind of explains a bit of his work situation. He's bouncing from one job to another,
Sure,
but
yeah.
the kind of begs the question, if he was putting this much effort into, his other work, would he, even have a problem? But is that not the problem as well, where he hasn't been given an opportunity to do his thing? He's always doing someone else's thing. Going back to the cartoon at the beginning where his gripes about the script with the smoking, right?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it really speaks to like what lengths he's willing to go to ensure that he's the one that spends that time with his kids, not anybody else, right? Not a stranger. And yeah, and basically what he does is pretty criminal.
Yeah, that impressions montage. I mean, although it's supposed to be funny, it's almost, yeah, you're almost like that's a little bit creepy. That's a little bit. I mean, because it's Robin Williams and because you're watching a Robin Williams movie, you're gonna laugh. But if it was anybody else, like if it was Liam Neeson in the '90s, that would have been a creepy, creepy movie. I'm just saying. Um, Yeah, I mean, and it makes sense. And they try to make also, I don't know if it was on purpose, but they try to make like the court a court appointed uh what's it called, social worker to be
Hmm.
kind of like negatives in a way too. But like it's like she's not like she's a social worker. Of course they're gonna be off-putting. They have to deal with you assholes all day that don't want to get jobs.
Yeah.
Like so it's like, you know, there's yeah, I mean, her expectation's always going to be low, and you're going to have to prove her wrong, and that's just like
Hmm.
proving that you can be an adult that's like capable of taking care of children, and that's a part of the responsibility of being a father. Like, if you can't take care of yourself, why would a social worker think that or clear you for having children in the house? Yeah, like imagine she
Yeah.
walked in, saw like, a crack pipe on the whatever, and she was like, yeah, kids can come. Like that's not going to make any goddamn sense. So yeah, you have to not be such a, when you're moving into a place, try to tidy up, try to do that. But I mean, that's a part of his journey, right? So that's where we get into like the gender journey in this story. And
Hmm.
I think that what happens with the gender in this story is we play two roles. You have the female versus the male, but
Hmm.
also there's a little bit of bias towards age. There's a little bit of ageism. But I think what it is that they're just focusing on the fact that he's being a Mrs. Doubtfire, right? So Mrs. Doubtfire is an older lady, and he's created this whole character who
Hmm.
used to have a husband. He gives her a backstory as an actor
Yep.
would, and then he starts to like almost. It's like from playing this character, he starts to like learn things like cooking food and things that he didn't never did for himself before. And it's so funny because by learning to do these things like for the children as a nanny, because now he has to, he becomes like this adult, and then he starts learning, oh, that's what I was not doing. I wasn't,
Exactly.
if I had just done these things all the time, maybe this would have never been a
He
problem.
starts acting like a responsible adult, so that that responsibility becomes second nature to him. So he's actually able to function like an adult, day to day.
Mm-hmm. And it's the thing is like he's kind of weirded out by the fact that he's like not sure why or what it is that she doesn't see in him anymore and what she saw him before, but she kind of explains it in the film, and it's the fact that like at one point she found him being romantic and more passionate and more like trying to do things for her basically, and it just at some point it was not about her anymore. His journey was
Hmm.
only interest he was only interested in pleasing the kids, and Yeah, I mean that I could see that totally destroying a relationship.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so the next part of the movie is we like to talk about is if the movie is talking to us, and I like to say, is it talking to me? Is it talking to me? Is it talking to you, Eric? Is it talking to you?
It is still, even after 30 years, definitely a great movie to watch. Some important themes to look at throughout this movie, themes of like, gender roles and stereotypes. Um, I mean, I think something that often gets ignored is with this movie is just the ethical implications of, Robin Williams or Daniel, as his character is called, of his huge lie in throughout this movie. Because, under regular circumstances, um, I don't think any such reconciliation would be possible. I think a big part of that is just, Hollywood magic. Um, I
Maybe, yeah.
think I think a real case of this happening would result in, global headlines, in probably all kinds of a media circus dissecting, every single aspect of this guy's life because of, this massive lie that he kind of ran. And I'm sure people have been exposed for huge lies like that. And, you know, as much as you love your kids, you can't really, you shouldn't, uh, commit like federal crimes like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it is a pretty big crime, pretending to be somebody else and just like going against a court order. Again, those are the things I thought the judge would talk about by the end of the film. But like he was more disappointed that he was wearing women's clothing and it was
Yeah.
had bizarre behavior for an actor. You're a very good actor and you just have bizarre behavior, is what he tells them. And I'm like, well,
Well,
maybe he's a British woman on the inside. You don't know that. And so yeah, it's kind of intriguing. I mean, the way the movie talks to me and it gives me some story that I identify with and I relate to now as an adult is like the whole theme of him trying to make ends meet, trying to find a job. And there's a little bit of a journey there with him as an adult, again, finding out how to be responsible, but also like that you can't just go around just like waiting for the next big job to come to you. You have to work for it. He got lucky. There's again the Hollywood magic that you're talking about, where he just happens to meet the general manager in a funny circumstance
he gets
where
this 8 extra hours,
yeah,
and then the guy just happens to see him doing his own monologue, right? And he's like, "Oh my God, you're amazing. Tell me your ideas." Right? Like, you've got to be
exactly.
pretty. That's super lucky of him to have that happen. And, if it hadn't been for that chance encounter, he would still be, shipping off those film canisters, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe in another universe, that's what he ends up doing. Just ships off canisters for the rest of his life, rather than ending up being Mrs. Doubtfire and having a successful children's TV show.
I mean, yeah. I mean, what's also like of course, because again, it's trying to be a comedy, you have to add this like these random coincidences. And one of the biggest scenes and the biggest part of this film is like right at the end where, he gets caught and it just happens to go hand in hand with him trying to figure out his career. And it's like he has to be there for this meeting for his job, but also he has no excuse for Mrs. Doubtfire not being there for his kids. And he's split between these two worlds now, where it's like I want to be Mrs. Doubtfire with my kids, but I also want to be um there. I want to get a job. I want to get like something
You
so I can
you
start
know
living my life again. And so
you
what
know what?
happens? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, now that I've after 30 years of having watched this movie, I came to the realization that He should have just gone as himself, met the general manager of the station, and said screw it to the other dinner, because quite frankly, the other one
Yeah,
is a lie that's gonna that lie, that house of cards
that's the
is gonna fall
comedy,
apart
right? That's
at
the
one
whole
point,
choice
right?
there. It's this idea that he had to keep going back and forth and then going to the
That
bathroom,
he could
chain,
that
and,
he
and,
could
and
he could have made up
yeah,
any excuse as Mrs. Doubtfire to not go,
to not go,
right?
right? And it
To
could
not
have
go.
not gone that way.
He didn't have to go. She's an old lady. She can make up whatever excuse. And quite frankly, you've got to respect her decisions. You're not
Yeah.
gonna pressure an old lady to go with you. So I mean
I
that
guess a part of it was the jealousy too, to be there to like not make sure this guy isn't like hitting on his wife. But I thought that was really bizarre. And
like I said, like the
yeah.
other going to the restaurant as himself, figuring it out, that's how he gets his kids back, not
Hmm.
the other way, right?
Hmm.
The other one just it keeps the lie. It maintains the lie that the longer it goes on, I think the angrier people would get over it, right?
Hmm.
Like imagine that situation went on for years and then they found out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think
Like
he
that would
had
be
to
insane, right?
he had to get caught in the lie eventually. And I think a part of it, I think that they did a little bit of like in vino, um, in vino verte, there's like in the wine, there's truth. Like so, he's
There's
like yeah,
truth. Yeah.
yeah, he's a little bit drunk, and yeah,
Oh, well,
so
I mean, in that scene, he got
and that's
hammered, right?
yeah, he
Because
gets
he had
hammered,
to catch up.
and then it's
He had
so
to
it's
catch up to the general manager. He's like, "Oh,
yeah,
I ordered you a couple of scotches, because you got to catch up with me." And he's like two doubles, and he just pounds those back. And then He's going to the bathroom, quite like literally doing costume changes, like he's at an
exactly,
award show, right?
exactly, yeah, and then that's the
Trying
thing.
not just that, but trying to conceal that he's even doing that, not just from the two parties that he's with, but also from other patrons who are at the same restaurant. It's a real balancing act. He's juggling
Actually,
all of this stuff, right?
yeah, and even
While
in
he's
the
hammered.
dinner, yeah, even in this dinner, like a lot of things happen in this dinner, like, and that's why I remember this film being much longer than it was, because I remember this dinner scene being so long, and it's because it's exhausting to watch him go back and forth and
Oh my
playing,
God, yes, it
right.
is.
But like he goes to the general manager, and you notice that there's also again that gender thing comes out where um the general
He
manager is very
questions
very
he
guy.
questions him
He's
why he's
very
wearing the
broy. He's very like, have another drink with me.
right.
And he's, trying to be a cool guy. And in the meantime, you have like Robin Williams, trying to be a cool guy too. And so he plays that like he almost switches characters again. It's almost like he's switching personalities.
Mm-hmm.
Just to be cool with this general manager, like as if like that's what you have to do as an actor, I guess, is kiss a little butt. But like those aren't the things that he would believe in. That doesn't make sense because he wouldn't want that. Like imagine, somebody talking about his daughter that way. The way
No,
he was talking
exactly.
about, oh yeah, I met this waitress and she was so like, and then there's like, it's like this, it was so off-putting to me when they had to act like dudes. Like it was just like, okay, you guys are just
When
like
he
the
had to play off that
typical,
role just so he
yeah.
could hide his true intentions behind why he was at the restaurant, right?
Which really made me surprised at the fact that the general manager was so accepting that like, oh yeah, I get where you're going with this character. Like give me
I
a
think
call. Like yeah, this is a good idea, like you should definitely
I
play.
think the only reason for that is because he saw dollar signs. If it wasn't
Yeah,
for that, I think there would be a lot more uh disgust and a lot more, you know,
maybe.
admonishing of what he did, right? But because that character is going to be his new hit show that he knows is going to be a winner. I mean, it's a little bit easier to digest, I guess, in his mind.
Now I need to ask you, do you know anything about that restaurant they were at, like Bridges? Because like it seems like it existed in real life and it was like this
It does.
important Los
It does
Angeles.
exist. It does exist in real life. It's not in Los Angeles. Let me see here. I do have this in my notes.
Is that where they're supposed? Oh no, San Francisco. They're in San Francisco, right?
They're in San Francisco, yeah.
Well, at least in the movie, they're supposed to be. I'm not sure if that's where the restaurant is, but I remember all the yeah because the roads are all up and down. And that which even made it crazier for me is like where did he find um a person with a bunch of animals to just like hang out on a street? Like it doesn't make any sense. It's a very bizarre film.
It's in Danville, so it is about it's just outside of San Francisco,
Oh,
and it
okay.
actually still open to today. And there's a poster in there of Robin Williams that he signed. So I mean,
Oh, that's hilarious.
every restaurant where that's actually appeared in a movie probably has something like that, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I wonder if they still have like where the payphone was in the back. Oh, my favorite thing is he had to find the matchbox to the restaurant so he could call call the number on the
Well, I
payphone
mean,
to
I guess you could consider that a bit of a tourist attraction, based on the movie, because
yeah.
the some of the other stuff have become tourist attractions. Like the house in the movie became a tourist attraction after Robin Williams passed away.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of people actually go and visit there, um, like see the house where the movie was filmed.
That's interesting. I mean, the other thing the judge doesn't bring up is that he like allegedly tried to murder Pierce Brosnan. Like he basically knew that this man was allergic and he put like just a whole
Oh, the
bunch of
spice.
cayenne pepper all over that. Like you knew that guy was going to die. Like isn't there a part of like the story where it's like
And then
attempted
he
murder? You know
and
what
then
I
he
mean?
kind of and then he kind of jokes, "Oh no, I murdered the son of a bitch." You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he did. I think you knew that.
Yeah. It's again his like childish way of being is like he thinks it's funny, but it's not because like you could have actually killed a man. I
Right?
mean, I guess he has that realization, but it's really bizarre the interaction with like the two characters after where he saves his life even though he almost killed him, and then
Unbeknownst to him.
Pierce Brosnan fist bumps him for helping him out. Like, I don't know. It was kind of it's a very bizarre interaction. Actually, the whole time, his obsession with Pierce Brosnan was really bizarre. When he was playing the role of Mrs. Doubtfire, and he's constantly trying to make fun of his penis size, like that was a huge part of his jokes, is like you must, again, focusing on the things that children would do to focus on someone that would really like
Well,
to
he tried
target their ego. You know
right,
what I
exactly.
mean?
Well, he tried to emasculate him at every single
Exactly.
point, just to whatever he could to get a leg up over him, right?
Yeah, and again, it's like I get how it could be funny to people back then, sort of, but like watching it now, I just don't get the same humor out of it. I just find that it's very depressing that this man can't get over the fact that his wife has divorced him, and it has nothing to do with necessarily like it's not something he can necessarily do. It's just there's no love there anymore, and so maybe you could have changed at some point, but you didn't, and that
But
wasn't
isn't
you,
isn't
and that
isn't
there's
that kind of
nothing
like a
wrong with
problem
that.
that we have now? Isn't that
Yeah,
still a problem we have now where certain men feel like they're entitled to like a woman's love or things like
yeah,
that, and they
absolutely.
just can't seem to get over that kind of thing. And like you're not entitled to any of that, right? It's kind of mutual. If it only goes one way, that's kind of the end of it, right? Like you can't, like you said, you can't force somebody.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I had to reflect on too growing up, and I had to learn in my own way, and I think everybody does. But I think that's important to say too. You have to learn, so that means you have to change. So, like when you have a relationship and it goes wrong, and you have a bad relationship. Now with them, is with his character, unfortunately they had spent 14 years of their lives probably starting from college,
Mhm.
so you're thinking like they never really had other relationships between then, so they didn't really like, he probably really didn't learn until the end of this relationship, and unfortunately, and he had to see the end of it to be able to understand what he had, or if he cared at all about this. Like, I mean, he might think that he still loves his wife, but it could also be that it's just like he's still in love with the idea of his wife and not who she is as a person, maybe because she's changed and people change, and
And she
so,
has changed. You know, how
and
can someone
people,
not change after 3 kids and 14 years
yeah,
together? You know,
and
that you are going to change,
want
right?
something for yourself, right? And want something for yourself, and not have to care about other people anymore, wrecking everything for you. Like, maybe you want your kids to love you, maybe you want
Yeah,
to spend more time with your children. So
for sure,
yeah,
for sure.
and so I can definitely see that side of the story, but there's ultimately, like, I get the struggle of a man trying, and I think that's important in the 90s, trying to understand. I mean, it's silly to say, but like what women want, and maybe at the time that was the question. Now without the binary, I mean, there's what all people want really at the end of the day is somebody that will help them, and but there's different types of people too, and some people feel like little things like just helping them throughout the day, doing things for them, like, cleaning, washing the dishes without you having to say something, or picking up, doing the laundry, picking up the trash, do whatever, and doing that without having to be asked. And I think that's appreciated from some people, and then there's other people who are more like appreciate things of just spending time with that person or
Yeah, or
whatever.
just
but
being open and openly communicative. You know,
but
I
a
mean, that's
relationship
a
has to have, like, yeah, you have to compromise both ways. So if somebody in the house
it's give and
is
take, right? Like
yeah
any
is
successful relationship, it's give and take. You can't just give and or take and expect that to work. I mean, some people
exactly.
can make that work, but it's a toxic relationship, right? And
And
I
it's
mean,
funny that, like, it like, again, it took him all the way till the end of the film till he got to where he's now comfortable in a new job, and again struggling with like this complex of who am I, what am I doing, and like with my life, and am I going
mm,
the right way, and finally finding something that grounds him, something that like gives him like purpose. And even though he doesn't get to see the kids for a while, moving forward, there's a little bit of a sob story where he has to be somebody has to be watching him like he's a predator. And I'm like, yeah, whose fault is that? You were stalking your children anyway.
yeah,
Like, like, you could say, you can put it however you want, but yeah, at the end of the day, it wasn't the judge's choice was his quirkiness, but the real problem here was, the illegal stuff. But also teaching your children that it's okay to pretend to be somebody else, imposter, yeah,
yeah,
and yeah,
definitely. I mean, and he pulled it off so well.
yeah,
But again, it does kind of send the wrong message to people that you can you just change who you are, you can get what you want.
yeah. But what I thought is, it's interesting because in my mind, what I'm really picturing now is like this older man who's learned that maybe that's who he really is he's Mrs. Doubtfire, and that's where he's most comfortable. And it's not about, even though he was so obsessed with Pierce Brosnan's genitalia, it's not about the penis, it's not about the vagina, it's just about being who you want to be, and if that makes you happy. And I think if you can see the value in that, then you can still appreciate the film. Is like, he tried to discover and he learned from his mistakes, it doesn't solve everything. And then it gives him like this. That's why the passage at the end when he's telling all the children, like everybody has different types of families, because this movie is, again, it's almost, it's supposed to be a comedy, and it has Robin Williams starring it, and it's supposed to be all about Robin Williams and how funny he is. But really, if you look at it in a serious way, it's really about that like idea of families being, having different
Different
types of families, people who are divorced, people who have only one parent, people who have two of the
dads,
same
two moms.
gender.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
exactly.
there's all kinds of different types of families out there. And um or your relationship with your grandfather, with your uncle, with your, and you have different
Mhm.
types of family relationships out there, that it doesn't have to necessarily be, mother, father. And because even that is not even a realistic view of a family. Like the whole idea of nuclear families is
Oh, it's
historically
non-existent
unrealistic.
now.
I
Yeah.
mean, it was historically non-existent, because if you think about people from, the 1800s or whatever, even in the light age of enlightenment, men still died at young ages, and women took on responsibility of taking care of the kids, taking care of whatever the
Oh,
house.
yeah. Absolutely.
um and then they would die in war, they would die in, from whatever, or vice versa, the mom dies from giving birth to the child, and then it's all on the responsibility of the dad to take care
Yeah,
of the
and
children.
that'd be quite common, right?
Yeah, so again, there was all kinds of different types of families even back then, and people being raised by different family members, people being raised by orphanages, people like it's not new, it's not different. You're not a crazy person, or you're not different just because you didn't have a mom and dad growing up in the same house. You know what I
No, but I
mean?
think it's just that idea that was created in the 1950s about like, the modern nuclear family of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, mom, dad, two kids, car, and a dog.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, just to sum it up, like for me, I learned from it some important things, like now, what, like, again, about specifically about my feelings towards um employment, and the search for employment, and those types of things are certainly on my mind these days. And so when I what I focused on really in this, and this viewing, or this time I watched it, or this time I watched it, I focused on this like idea of, like, Robin Williams trying to become his own person, and also trying to figure out his career. And as an actor, that would be extremely difficult to even imagine, thinking you're one day going to be on a television show, or to be in a movie, or, I mean, it's like that, those types of goals seem almost impossible to be an actor,
Mm-hmm.
at least to be a famous actor. So if you're not doing it for the love of acting, you shouldn't be doing it, because
No,
it the chances of you being discovered, it's very slim,
I
right?
mean,
Because
I would argue that for anybody that's interested in making it in the arts, like if you're not in it for the love of the art that you're in, then don't do it,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. And so there was something to be said about that, in the character that he played. And I think that was part of the character as well. That, like, he was showing you how a part of his journey, he couldn't just keep a job. It wasn't enough for him to keep a job just because he was voice acting, because the job didn't mean to him what he thought it should mean. And
Mm-hmm.
he's trying to make this child friendly because it's a cartoon, and that's not what the people who are making the cartoon are interested in, right? So it's two different mentalities battling, and that's not enough for him, and that's enough for him to leave a job. And that should be enough for a lot of people. Like, if you morally can't sit through a situation, then yeah, there's nothing wrong with taking that moral stance. It's just that it's kind of irresponsible when you have children, and
Yeah,
that's where I
exactly.
saw it. But yeah, I do understand the struggle of trying to find that perfect medium because jobs are hard. Any job is hard. Any job can be difficult. Any job needs planning and it takes time. And some jobs can be harder than others.
Right.
And they need more organization, and you need to be better at organizing yourself. Um, but you also want to find that place that also makes you like satisfied. Are you comfortable with what you do? Do you find you're achieving a day-to-day like day-to-day goals? Do you find that you're achieving things that make you feel confident? Are you feeling confident in what you do and that sort of thing? So all those
Exactly.
things play important parts and career finding. So when he finally finds his niche, which is acting as Mrs. Doubtfire, it becomes his personality. It becomes a part of him. It becomes his way of reaching
Coping.
the world. Yeah, I
It's kind of like
wonder.
his ability to cope with the situation that he's kind of found himself in, right?
I
Because
wonder if
nothing
somebody
is really
could have
working for him.
created a show like that though, because like I still think that if I'd like to believe like the world that they live in exists, but like would children watch a show with a man who's playing a woman
They wouldn't
on?
know.
But would the parents be comfortable like these days with stuff like that? I don't even
But
know.
would they know,
Now they wouldn't, right?
right?
But that's isn't that worse? Like if they didn't tell the public that actually it's a man playing a woman.
But what does it matter, right? Like, what
I
impact does that have?
guess. I
No, but I'm just
guess.
saying, like, from even from like a practical perspective, like, what impact would that have on the
Mhm.
message that's coming through, right? If the message has nothing to do with the man playing a woman, and it's more like a neutral message, if you're just trying to educate kids, and what does it matter who's saying it? I mean, it could be a man, woman, talking dog, cat, purple dinosaur, yellow bird. It doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah.
At least in my mind.
But then you're saying that Mrs. Doubtfire is more a um a costume. But like Mrs. Doubtfire is a person, you know? I That's how I see it. Like Mrs.
But is
Doubtfire is
she
taken
though?
on.
Because she's a result of this guy's attempts to get his kids back, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But I feel like it's just a part. That's where I'm like having a hard time is like I think that Mrs. Doubtfire is a person. It's a part of this person's personality. And even though it's almost crying Robin Williams and how he was in real life, because it's like I have to put on this show for you to find me funny. And look at me, this is me, I'm Robin Williams. But then in real life Robin Williams is all like I need a break from people and like
The whole sad clown thing.
yeah, it's very very interesting. um like Mrs. Doubtfire is what he puts on for the TV, but when he's at home, he's sad clown. Yeah, but yeah, interesting. So, what would you say to sum this up? Would you recommend this movie to most people?
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
would recommend this up like until, I'm on my deathbed. I think it's one of Robin Williams' best movies. Um, I mean, it's I think one of part of his enduring legacy, in
hmm
terms of comedy. And he's able in this movie, he's really able to bridge that gap between doing a comedic role and still maintaining a certain level of dramatic role in there too.
yeah, no, exactly. And I think it's a great movie for Robin Williams if you enjoy Robin Williams, but it's also Sally Field acts her butt off in this movie. I don't
They
know
all are.
why.
Everybody's great in this movie.
I don't know why Pierce Brosnan's in this movie though. I mean, he really doesn't do a lot of acting. He has like two
Well,
lines, maybe.
it's interesting because he was on a TV show in the '80s, Remington Steele, and his career kind of fell off after that show ended. And Tim Allen was actually offered the role that Robin Williams played, and also the role that Pierce Brosnan played. He declined both times.
Oh,
He declined, so they may have just gone with Pierce Brosnan. And then 2 years later, after Mrs. Doubtfire, he gets the role of James Bond, and now we have Pierce Brosnan, movie star.
oh man,
So
Goldeneye. That's a movie we need to talk about. But yeah,
GoldenEye, lots of great Pierce Brosnan films that came as a result of Mrs. Doubtfire. They gave him that shot with this movie. I think maybe we can thank Tim Allen for that,
that's crazy.
for declining that role. But yeah, 2 years later, he ends up on getting the role for James Bond, which is huge, right? I mean, going from Mrs. Doubtfire to getting named as James Bond, and Mrs. Doubtfire being the only real big thing he did at that time. Um, that's a big step for him, right?
Yeah. It would have been different with Tim Allen. It would have been
It
definitely.
very much would have been different. He brings a very different kind of
But I
comedy.
think I think it would have been more believable that he was like a father and that he was kind of like a father that goofed off a lot.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have been able to do the angle where he dresses up as a woman because I think that's what Tim Allen had a problem with.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I have a feeling that's what it was. I don't know if that's what it is, but I have a
Yeah,
feeling
that makes
that he
sense.
didn't love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you know anything about Tim Allen, then
Yeah.
I'm probably right.
Yeah, as far as a film goes for like as a children's or family movie, I think it's a good movie to watch to have like a different like a better viewpoint of seeing all sides of like a relationship and
Divorce, the effects of it.
divorce
In
and
fact,
the
the
effects
movie
of
was
it and
supposed
the
to be a
effects
little
it
bit
has on the
darker.
children.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
and
movie was actually supposed to be a little bit darker and it's supposed to show more of the effects of divorce on kids, but and I'm glad they
yeah,
didn't because they opted to go for something a little bit more family
lighthearted.
friendly. And
No, I feel
yeah,
like
and
I
I'm
want to
glad they
see the.
did
I
because
feel I want to see the darks. I want to see the dark Mrs. Doubtfire movie. I think that's yeah. I want to see it. I think they should remake this movie and
listen,
show.
just jump on your favorite uh AI, whether it's Chat GPT or whatever, and just get it to generate a dark version of
Okay.
Mrs. Doubtfire for you. Yeah, and
Well, yeah,
we'll
yeah.
see what you get.
We'll make it. We'll make it. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, like, they should just bring like another actor should just come in. I don't know, Timothée
Do a
Chalamet.
brand new version of it.
Yeah, Timothée Chalamet plays. Oh no, that would be hilarious. No,
Timothée
he's not. He's not.
Chalamet.
He's not old enough.
We gotta wait a few years for that.
Zendaya is the wife. You know.
Oh my god!
No, that's too much. No, you're right. Like, there's not the right actor right now for that sort of
Listen,
thing.
no, no, no. What we actually need is so they filmed so much of this movie. They did so many takes, and there
Could you
was
imagine they bring
tension.
Anthony Jeselnik? No, that would be just. He'd just
It's
be
gonna be a
so
shit.
sarcastic. It would be. It would be exactly like the. Actually, no, he would be perfect. Anthony Jeselnik should be the dad,
What we
and for
need,
the dark version of Mrs. Doubtfire, right? So it's like
what
he would be so dark about it and so like not a good father figure that it would play a perfect role. I think
so
that's a good
what
one.
what we need is to get the R-rated cut of this movie. So the way this happened was is that there was so much filming done in this movie and so much improvisation done by Robin Williams is that there is technically enough film to do a PG-13, and R-rated cut of Mrs. Doubtfire.
Oh, okay.
So I would love to see the R-rated cut of this movie because I think that would be absolutely hilarious.
That might be interesting. That might be bizarre. It might be a journey. I don't know if I'll find it hilarious. I don't know if I find this movie hilarious now. I think um but again, it's not
find
something.
funny moments in it,
I always
but
think that there's a
yeah.
value to rewatching these movies, especially from the '90s. But I don't think this one specifically. I mean, with children, I think adults would gain a lot more from watching this film. Um, it's certainly got some parts of it that will annoy you, parts of it that will make you feel good, but I think um yeah, it's very good for like parents to see something like this and see their effect on
Mhm.
kids. Yeah,
Oh,
I
for
think
sure.
so.
No question about that.
And how they look to their children, I think is
Mhm.
very important too. But yeah, I mean, that's all the time we have for today, guys. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks for listening. Until next time.
Give me that in the city chair. Jump around in my whip, itty bitty, looking pretty chill. Put my shades on, you ain't even seen it yet. Man, I'm so fresh, and you know I'm always spelling chill. Give me what you want, what you got, cause I never get enough. You ask me how I want it, and you say you want a chance on me. Chances are you don't know how to do this shit respectfully. I say it like you're rough, cause I need a man protecting me. I ain't say this shit for later. I said, baby, come and get it. Feels taking over if you let him. I'ma take the paper, I'ma roll it up, and later he might do what he wanted, cause I let him. Give me something that I'm never gonna forget, because baby, I'm the only one you gotta impress. I won't take any more, and I won't take any less. I'm the queen in this, you know I got the finesse. Give me that, give me that, give me that. Give me that feeling. Bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. Like when we were young. Like when we were young. Like when we were young.
Bring it back, yeah, just bring it back. Sitting in the back, yeah, I'm rolling up some Trinidad. Feeling like the bestest, always got the best shits. Come around, baby, yeah, you knowin' who the best is. And I just bought a record, so y'all don't get it twisted. I ain't talking cheese, even though I'm buzzing, listen. You don't wanna miss it when you get the feeling. It'll make you feel explicit like a new addiction, baby, it'll take a hold. I know you're feeling cold, cause I've been feeling cool. You give me all these feelings that I used to have in school. These butterflies got me feeling high, like I'm floating through the air, hanging out like a satellite. Yeah, it's really got me feeling right. All around me, yeah, looking like a ceiling light. Hanging out with a hella glow. See me from the center of the earth with no telescope.
Give me that,